everyone. Welcome back. I am happy to be back with this podcast after taking a 2 week hiatus. As some of you may know, if you follow me on social media, that I've been away. I was in Brazil visiting my dad, and I got back this earlier this week, and I'm back to my normal routine. So I'm happy to be bringing you this solo episode today, and I hope you get some value from what I'm about to share with you. Sometimes a book can find you in just the right moment when you're wrestling with something that you can't quite name. That's what happened when I picked up Who Deserves Your Love by Casey Davis. It doesn't it didn't just give me advice, it gave me language. Language for the messy middle of love. The part where connection meets self-respect, where boundaries and compassion can actually coexist. Today's episode, we're diving into this book and how it completely reframed the way I think about relationships, romantic, platonic, and everything in between. We'll talk about why this isn't a cut people off and protect your peace kind of book, the difference between mistreatment and abuse, and what it really means to love people without losing yourself. So grab a coffee or tea or whatever feels like comfort, and let's talk about what truly deserves your love. Why this book hit home for me. This year, I've listened to a lot of books about boundaries, relationships, breaking free from codependency and people pleasing, but none of them were as nuanced as this book. I'm someone who grew up with very few boundaries, and I've been learning to set them as an adult from the last 9 years or so. So I'm always open to learn more, and that's why I pick up these kinds of books. Casey Davis put words to things that I had been feeling but I couldn't articulate. The book's premise is that it's not about ending relationships, it's about redefining healthy connection. The book has 3 parts: how to work on your relationships, how to make decisions about relationships, and how to use boundaries to have better relationships. This book is for any type of relationship, it's not just romantic. One thing that really stood out to me is that this book has concrete, practical exercises that you can use to help you decide whether a relationship is right for you. One of the I'm going to be talking about several takeaways here, but one of the big takeaways is the power that 2 things can be true, or the power of dual truths. She explores the concept of holding multiple truths. You can love someone and need boundaries. She separates out relationship harm into 3 categories: screw-ups, mistreatment, and abuse. And she explains the difference between them very clearly. I'm going to be using visuals from her website here. So all of these visuals are credit to Casey Davis, and I'm going to be putting links in the show notes for those who are interested in seeing her website, her visual content, and any other of her tools, or even to purchase the book. Actually, she has a really good TikTok video about this too, where she explains screw-ups versus mistreatment versus abuse. And I'll put that in the link also. In relationships, it's inevitable there will be screw-ups. Something your partner or friend does that hurts you. Usually those can be resolved with an apology and a commitment to do better next time. But then there's mistreatment. That's a pattern of repeat hurtful behavior and a refusal to address that behavior. And then there's abuse. Abuse is mistreatment plus elements of coercion, degradation, control, or intimidation. So here's an example. Like if a person says something insensitive that offends you, it could be a screw up if it's addressed in a healthy way. If you bring it up to the person and the person apologizes and makes an effort to correct that behavior. But if the person continues to say those insensitive things without willingness to correct or even after you've asked them to stop, that's mistreatment. But then if the person continues to do the behavior with malicious intentions to hurt you, that's abuse. I might not be doing a great job of explaining this, but if this is a concept that's of interest to you, I highly, highly recommend that you pick up this book and follow Casey Davis's content. Another tool that she offers in this book, which I thought was super helpful, is the relationship decision tree. It's a practical tool for deciding whether to stay, to strengthen, or to step back from a relationship. She created a decision tree with questions like, is this person willing to work towards collaborative solutions that mitigate pain? And does staying in this relationship violate my values? She explains each step clearly and provides examples on how you could use the tree. She invites readers to make a list of values, and if the reader doesn't have a list yet, she offers hers as a starting point. And the ones that she offers are number 1, care and protection of minor children. Number 2, the care and protection of my physical and psychological safety. Number 3 is my autonomy. And number 4 is implicating me in a crime without my consent. So she goes a little bit deeper into the psychological safety aspect. She says psychological safety doesn't mean comfort. It doesn't mean there's never any harm or hurt. It specifically refers to a lack of malicious torment or a lack of behaviors, like behaviors that threaten your psychological safety. So a little bit of nuance there. She also explains how and why conflict can occur in relationships where both people are genuinely trying their best and how to manage that. So I found this section to be quite enlightening, and I love how she takes a very nuanced approach to trying to navigate relationship problems. Because if you listen to pop psychology, which I often do, there's a lot of binary advice, like either stay or leave, or cut them out of your life, or never look back, kind of thing. But it's not that simple. Relationships are complex. We're people, and people are complex, right? So there's intentionality behind what's been going on. There's interpretations of the other person's behavior. There's what triggers us. Like, she has a really good section about where she explains these two couples, how they were triggering each other, and how the behavior of one person was causing the other person to pull back, or in another example, the behavior of one person was causing the other person to interpret the message that they're not worthy of being loved, for example. And I thought that was really impactful. Then she has a section about conditional love, and she says, we can love without conditions, but relationships should have conditions. So this can be a little bit hard to interpret. You can love someone deeply and still require certain things from that relationship. For example, respect, or treating you with kindness, or not overstepping your boundaries. You can have compassion for someone's struggles while also protecting your own space. So this book, it emphasizes that vulnerability, trauma, and personal history, those things can be both a cause and the solution to relationship struggles if we can recognize those in ourselves and in the other person. This perspective brings me freedom and responsibility. Like, as I'm navigating my own relationships, whether it be with Frank or with a friend or with my family of origin, I can think about how each of us have our own traumas and how those traumas can trigger us to behave in certain ways. And, I think as I become more aware of these things, I can be stronger in these relationships, and I can be stronger at protecting myself and having self-respect. And with when it comes to filled cups, as you guys may know, that part of my vision for filled cups is to help people build connections, meaningful, real connections that fill their emotional cups. But that also means respectful, kind, and sustainable. I actually want both people in the relationship to be respectful and kind and genuine and honest. And then Casey Davis, she has a large section of the book that's dedicated to boundaries as bridges. And in a world that often treats boundaries like walls, I think we can use them as tools for creating more emotional balanced, meaningful connections. And I'm not the boundary expert. I have never been. I've just been learning, but I've always struggled when I started learning about boundaries that sometimes they can seem a little rigid, or they can alienate the other person or even sever a connection. But that was just because I was afraid of setting boundaries incorrectly, or I was afraid of how would I set a boundary in a way that doesn't hurt the other person, for example. And this is where Casey Davis uses a very nuanced approach to boundaries, and she goes pretty deep into what is my responsibility versus what is the other person's responsibility, and then what's my responsibility to the other person and what isn't. And she offers quite a few examples of healthy boundaries, uh, including the language of the healthy boundary versus a language of control. Um, Casey makes a really important distinction. Boundaries control your own behavior, while control tactics aim to manage someone else's. A boundary isn't, you need to text me back within an hour. That's trying to control someone else. A boundary is, if you're consistently unavailable when I need support, I'll invest more energy in friendships where I feel prioritized. She also talks about what our responsibility is to others, and I hadn't heard that approach in any of the other books about boundaries that I've read before. I feel after reading this book that I'm going to approach boundaries with more confidence and ease. She also talks about conscious co-healing, that the concept that you can heal within the relationship rather than outside of it. And that vulnerability and honesty can transform even difficult connections. I'll give you an example. With Frank, I've gone through a transformation over the last, I want to say 2-3 years, where I used to be more quick to judge and quick to criticize. And those were childhood patterns that kept on repeating themselves because I just simply wasn't aware of them. But once I found IFS, which is, I'm probably going to do an episode on IFS in the future. It's my favorite thing. Once I found IFS and I discovered the power of self-compassion, and I understood the origins of the critical nature that behavior that was coming out, I started acknowledging that with Frank. So sometimes we would get into some kind of disagreement, and I would tell him, hey, I can feel my critical nature coming out, but I don't want to do that. And here's how I'm feeling right now, but I don't want you to feel like I'm just trying to criticize you. And it's really hard to navigate, and it's really hard to verbalize it, even, at least for me it is. But I do believe that this concept of co-healing in the relationship, and I think I've been able to have some of those moments with Frank by being open and vulnerable about what was going on inside. And then, final reflection is that the main takeaway of this book is that love is a practice and not a prize. I encourage you guys, if you're into this kind of thing, to reflect on on your own relationship decision tree. If you're struggling with some kind of relationship trouble, I would highly recommend going to Casey Davis's website and looking up the decision tree, and maybe even buying her book. In this conversation, if it resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you read Who Deserves Your Love? And if so, what part of it stuck with you? You can message me through Filled Cups or Instagram, or share your reflections on social media, or here on YouTube or Spotify. And if the episode stirred something within you, maybe a relationship you're rethinking or a boundary you're ready to set, remember that learning who deserves your love isn't selfish, it's sacred work. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time, keep filling your own cup first so you can pour into your relationships from a place of fullness and not exhaustion.